Let me tell you a story about Jabal, the woman beater. He was called Jabal, the bulldozer, by the villagers, not because he cleared land, but because no one dared stand in his way. He was huge, and his chest was like a double-door wardrobe. As a child, Jabal watched his father rule their home like a kingdom. His father never asked for anything. He commanded, beat, and insulted. And every time his mother cried from the beatings, his father would dust his hands and say, "That's how to keep a woman in check." Those words sank deep into Jabal's heart. So, by the time he became a man, he believed a wife isn't a partner, but a property, and the property must obey its possessor or be punished. When he married Ada, the entire village celebrated. She was gentle, beautiful, and soft-spoken, the kind of woman who apologized even before you accused her. But she had no idea she was walking into a house where mistakes were treated like crimes. On the first morning of their marriage, she boiled water for him. She carried the bowl inside the room, smiling. "My darling husband, the water is ready." But Jabal dipped his hand inside the water and frowned. "You call this water warm? Are you all right?" Ada blinked, confused. "My husband." The fire was low, but before she could finish what she was saying, his hand met her cheek with a large thud. She staggered and grabbed the wall. "That is the last time you bring this nonsense to me," he said with a voice deep like thunder. Ada thought it was anger from stress, but she had no idea it was just the beginning. Because from that day on, everything became a reason for him to hurt her. If she served him food late, maybe the firewood was too damp or the rain wouldn't let it catch, he would slap her. No questions asked, just the back of his hands landing on her cheek. If she brought him water and it wasn't the exact temperature he wanted, another slap. If she cleaned the house and the floor was still a little wet, he would glare at her. "Are you trying to make me fall?" Before she would explain, his hand is already on her cheeks. If she did not clean fast enough, he would tell her, "So now you want the whole house to smell?" Another slap, as if the slap answered everything. No matter what she did, it was never enough, and his hands always had the final word. There was one evening she served him pounded yam. He tasted it and dropped the bowl immediately. "Ada, is this pounded yam or building block?" "I'm sorry, my darling husband. The mortar is too old." And before she knew it, he tore her wrapper and kicked her ribs. Neighbors heard the cries. They heard furniture falling. They heard Ada begging for her life, but nobody dared to enter. Who wants to fight a man of that size? Weeks became months. Months became years. Ada's eyes lost their shine. Her back bent from stress. Her voice became thin, like someone afraid to hear herself speak. Then one rainy night, her frail body couldn't take the pain anymore. She closed her eyes and never woke up. But what shocked the village wasn't her death. It was Jabal's reaction. At her burial, the same man who beat her without blinking cried louder than everyone. He knelt beside her coffin, beat his old chest, called her my love, my crown, my peace. Words she never heard while alive. Villagers whispered, "Ha, maybe he truly loved her." Oh. Others muttered, "Guilt cries louder than grief." But before the red soil dried on her grave, before her scent even left the compound, Jabal was already preparing to marry again. Not long after, he married Naza, a young woman from Obele village. She was hardworking, obedient, and terrified of him, exactly what Jabal liked. From the first week, Naza did everything to make her husband happy. If he said fetch water, she ran to fetch it. If he said pound yam, she pounded yam. If he said don't talk, she sealed her lips. But wicked men don't need provocation. One afternoon, she boiled yam for him. He put a piece in his mouth and spat it out dramatically. "Naza, are you trying to break my teeth? This yam is harder than stone." She knelt quickly. "I'm sorry, my darling husband." That was the only yam remaining. His belt landed on her back before she even finished. Another day, she ironed his shirt. When he wore it, he said, "So now you iron my clothes like I'm going for a burial." He dragged her by the arm and beat her until the shirt tore. Naza lived like a prisoner, waking before him, sleeping after him, jumping at every sound he made. But the day Jabal traveled for a traditional meeting in another village, Naza packed her wrapper, her cooking spoon, her small handbag and ran away. She did not even look back at the compound. Villagers only realized she was gone when they saw her footprints in the morning dust. When Jabal returned, he was furious, not because his wife left, but because people were talking. So he made a decision. No more wives from this village. He needed a fresh woman who didn't know his history. That was how he traveled to the far village of Okoro and found Nneka. Beautiful, calm, respectful, the kind of woman whose presence softened the room. When her father agreed to the proposal, tradition demanded that the bride's family must make inquiries. But Nneka didn't wait for anyone. She quietly traveled to Amanzi village herself. And the thing she heard, Ada died in that house. Naza ran away. That man is dangerous. He beats like he's practicing for wrestling. Nneka listened to every word. She did not flinch because Nneka was not foolish. Her uncle had taught her self-defense since she was 13, a type that could humble a full-grown man. But she still accepted the marriage because some battles you win from the inside. When Jabal brought her home, she behaved exactly how a perfect wife should. If he asked for food, she cooked. If he asked for water, she brought it. If he asked for silence, she gave it. Jabal was pleased. This one is well trained, a real wife. But wickedness always finds a door. It just waits for the right moment. And one evening, that moment came. She had simply asked, "Can I go visit my mother this weekend?" Jabal's face darkened. "What did you just say?" he asked Nneka. And she said, "I haven't seen my mom in months." But before she could finish, Jabal's hand were already on her cheek. What followed after that slap was not what Jabal expected, because the moment his hand landed on her cheek, Nneka did not cry. She smiled a slow, dangerous smile, and that smile was the beginning of Jabal's transformation. Nneka gently touched the cheek he slapped, looked at her palm like she was checking if her face peeled, then lifted her eyes slowly. "Jabal, this hand you just used to hit me." Her voice was calm, too calm. "Do you still want to use it in this world?" Jabal froze. The house suddenly felt hot. The air was thick. His huge frame suddenly seemed too small for the room. Nneka stood boldly facing him. She stepped closer, her chest almost touching his own. And even though he was huge, her confidence alone made him feel small. "You think I did not hear about you? You think I just entered this marriage blindly?" Her voice dropped lower. "Jabal, I know everything." And just like that, Jabal's heart jumped into his trousers. What? What do you mean?" he stammered. Nneka laughed, not a sweet laugh. "My dear husband," she said, "before I accepted to marry you, I asked questions. I went back to your village. I talked to your neighbors. I talked to your second wife's cousin. I even spoke to the nurse who treated women with bruises in your village." She tapped his chest. "I know about the beatings. I know about the wickedness. And I know about your first wife." Jabal's leg weakened. "But since you want to raise your hands again," her eyes narrowed, "let me help you understand something." Before Jabal could blink, Nneka grabbed his wrist. Not gently, she twisted it behind his back. "Ah, Nneka, leave me! My hand!" Jabal screamed, but Nneka was only getting started. She dragged his huge body like she was dragging a stubborn goat, pinned him to the wall, pressed his neck gently, not to choke him but to warn him. "You see this hand?" she hissed. "This hand will never touch me again unless it's to hand me money or hold my bag." When she finally released him, Jabal collapsed to the floor, sweating like a Christmas goat. And that was the day the mighty lion of Amanzi village turned into a house cat. From that moment, things changed. If Nneka said, "Jabal, sweep the compound," he swept it like an usher preparing for crusade. If she said, "Wash my clothes," he washed them down to her underwears. If she said, "Go and fetch water," Jabal carried buckets like a refugee escaping a war zone. And the villagers, they were enjoying the show. One afternoon, Mama Uzo saw Jabal bending down to scrub the veranda. She screamed, "Jesus! Is this not the almighty Jabal? Jabal the bulldozer, the same man that used to chase people out of the road with his size." Another villager whispered, "Marriage is truly a weapon. Look at a strong man washing wrapper. Is life not mysterious? At the stream, teenage girls would giggle. See husband material na. Whoever tamed Jabal deserves an award. Jabal heard everything, but he could not talk. Because anytime he remembered how Nneka twisted his wrist like a soaked bread, his spirit calmed down immediately. And Nneka, she became the queen of that house. If she wanted breakfast by 7 a.m., Jabal was already in the kitchen by 6 boiling water, slicing yam, making sure everything was perfect. If she asked for lunch, he served it hot. No grumbling, just quiet obedience. If she wanted dinner, he served it with humility while trembling at her feet. Nneka made sure he understood one thing very clear. This house is not a palace. You are not a king, and I am not your subject. We are partners, and if you ever forget that, you will serve more than just food. Strangely, Jabal started to change for real. He apologized to the families of his previous wives. He started helping people in the village, and he stopped intimidating everyone with his size. He finally became a man, not a tyrant. All because he married a woman who refused to fear him. And whenever someone asked Nneka how she did it, she smiled and said, don't worry, oh. I just showed him that those hands he was raising aren't heavier than mine. I hope you enjoyed every bit of this story. Please don't forget to like, drop a comment, and share. Bye, and see you in the next one.